This is the Meaning Business Podcast, your go-to source for business tips, advice, growth, and exit strategies, hosted by Bruce Coudray and Peter Spinda. Each episode, we bring you real stories, expert insights, and practical advice to help you succeed in today's market. Let's dive in.
So welcome everybody to another episode of Meaning Business, the podcast for people who are looking to buy, sell or grow their business. It's me, Bruce Coudray, and today again we have Peter Spinda, of course.
Hi everyone, hope you're doing well.
And
Thanks for having me on again, as usual.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. But you are the subject of today's podcast because
Shining that light on me.
yeah, that's right. Well, hopefully it doesn't reflect too brightly. But people often say, "Who's this Peter Spinda guy? Well, what's he done?" That sort of thing. So I thought it'd be really good for people to learn a little bit about you and your background and where you've come from.
Mm-hmm. I think when I was thinking about this the other day when you sent me the list of topics that we'll talk about and things like that, and I thought, I don't like talking about myself. So, but at the end of the day, the best way that we can learn is from each other. I love reading autobiographies, love reading whether it's a sports, artist, musician, business, because there's always lessons that you learn in life.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I've learned in life is that learning never stops and you're continuously learning. So if we're
Exactly.
hearing from each other, and so I think one thing that I want to say, it's not about ego. It's not about saying me.
No. We'll prove that.
We'll prove it. It's more about, what are the different journeys that we all undertake, and any success, there's no such thing as overnight success. The overnight success is 30, 40, 50 years in the making, it's not the one person that is the success. It's actually the people behind the person.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Well, not only that, but I'll add to that. So I think that autobiographies are interesting and really relatable. And usually the subject of the autobiography, whether they're a football coach or an actor or a swimmer or whatever they are, they've been through significant stress. No one gets to where they are, Richard Branson or whoever, without having gone through significant stress and setbacks, and we can relate to that.
Yeah.
And it's under that extreme pressure where we really have to invent ourselves, figure out what's important and how we're going to get through it or not, whether we just let go and say, no, too hard, not worth the effort.
I agree. I think
so. That's what I want to find out. I know there's a little bit of that in your life story.
And there is, and I think in terms of talking about pressure, probably the three key moments in my life. Moment number one was the moment that we left my birth country, so Hungarian by birth, and we left in 1987. And there are moments in life that you will never ever forget. We all have moments where you can think back and you can smell the moment, you can taste the moment, you can see the moment. And I will never forget the time when I was 7 years old and my mum woke us up in the middle of the night and told us, "Boys, pack your bags. We're going to go visit your father. He's in Bulgaria for holidays." He was 7 years old at the time. You don't think how otherwise. You just pack your bag. And I remember it being dark, and I remember the room, and I remember my brother, and I remember rushing because we had to rush. I remember the green Lada, which is I think it was a Russian-made European car. And then I remember for the next week or so, we were just traversing around Eastern Europe, going from checkpoint to checkpoint, and I didn't understand what was going on at the time. To me, it seemed like a bit of a holiday, but as I reflect back now as an adult, it's and I know I'm sort of spending time on this, but this is really important in terms of who I am and I guess how life shapes us. But as I reflect back on as an adult, I can appreciate and understand that my father had no papers and he went AWOL from the army. My mum had no papers. We had no passports. We had nothing. We were paying off guards and you were paying off checkpoints, and we're talking Eastern Bloc back in the 80s. It was pretty rough. I remember not being able to stop at certain points, and we had to use bottles to go to the toilet and, with my brother, and that was just how it was, sleeping in the back of the car. I remember the stopping at one checkpoint, and we had a couple of really rotten, like we're talking those black rotten bananas that were falling apart. And I hopped out of the car at one checkpoint to throw it out. And these kids rushed up to me and they took it off me, and they were fighting over this overtly ripe banana. And that was the first time in my life that I encountered poverty. And it was the first time in my life that I realized that what I had up until then wasn't necessarily the norm around the world,
Yeah.
you know. And then from that point, we were in Austria for 1 year. And again, I didn't understand this as a child, but we were in a refugee camp for a year. I remember sharing a room with an fairly certain, they were an African family. They had dark skin, lovely family, communal meals, communal everything. And then next thing you know, after a year, so I've gone from one school in Hungary to a school in Austria. And after a year, guess what? We're in Melbourne, right? And again, you go Hungarian, German,
Yes.
English. We didn't speak the language. So you've got these constant stresses. So you have to learn to adapt
And accommodate, yeah.
and accommodate. We had no money. We came to Australia. We
Yeah, obviously.
zero money. We had the typical
Start
one
from
or two
absolute scratch.
suitcases. That's it. And parents didn't have professional jobs or anything like that. So it was just make what you will of it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting time. And then the second major thing that I recall, and there were many things in the early childhood years, but there was one birthday, and I don't think my mum knows this, but I recall her talking to Dad at one of my birthdays about the fact that we've run out of money, and it was my birthday coming up, and it was like, okay, where are we going to get the money for food? We're literally about to run out, you know, and I knew that. And Mum doesn't know this, but there was a reason why for that period of my life when I went to that particular school, every day I wanted the exact same food, buttered bread. Every day I ate buttered bread because I heard Mum, I didn't want her to know.
Yeah.
We didn't have money, buttered bread, that's it. And I knew that we could afford the buttered bread, and it was 20 cents or 25 cents a school for tuck shop. And
Probably the cheapest thing.
it was the absolute cheapest. And I ate minimal just so
No wonder you're so skinny.
put the stress on them. I know, right? So that was a stressor in life. And so you go, okay, so you've picked up, you've moved countries, you've come over here, you've got those sort of stresses. And then just as you're starting to acclimatize, right? Because remember, there's also the development of identity. So who am I as an individual develops?
Especially as a teenager, yeah.
And so you go, I'm Hungarian, I'm Austrian, I'm Australian.
Yeah.
And then as the teenage years kick in, at the age of 92, we move back to Hungary. So I'm like, okay, so now I've gone from being Australian, I'm now Hungarian again. But then when we moved back to Hungary, I had to relearn Hungarian. And so when I started school, though, I started at the same year level that I was over here. But within a few weeks, we realized that I had a lot of problems because I actually didn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah.
So I had to be dropped back a year.
Yeah.
So then you go from where you were, drop back a year, restarting, and I had to get special tuition. I was struggling to read. So we had to find English versions of some of the Hungarian literature that we were reading. That was hard. So, you then
How
go
old were you
through
then, do you think?
12, 13, 14.
So yeah, that's really a formative period of your life.
It
Like you
was.
say, identity, who I am. Confidence is an important thing. Being confident, if you.
I had
speak the
no
language.
confidence.
Yeah.
My confidence was shot. I was a very, very, very introverted, shy individual. I struggled to look people in the eyes, highly intellectual. Like the thing that was always driven into my mind is that you need to become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. You've got to be professional.
degree,
It's
yeah.
the typical sort of,
Migrant
European
parents.
migrant parents
I love it.
pushing.
Yeah.
And that was the push. The plan was that Peter's going to become the doctor of the family. And
That's it.
that's all I knew.
Yeah.
I knew nothing other than the fact that I will be a doctor. And that was the path that
Yeah.
I take. So,
And it's important to say, I grew up with all my friends were migrants. And this is the parent wanting for you what they couldn't have.
That's right.
And wanting for you to never have to think about, where money's going to come from. And what they thought was, rightly or wrongly, that the way to do that was to get a degree and a profession where you get paid a lot of money and it's highly respected. So medicine, law, pretty much the top two, right? Maybe something else.
absolutely.
And that's what they want you to do.
That's exactly,
Yeah.
and so they got the lawyer in the family. So Greg, my brother, ended up becoming the lawyer. And
Your only
highly-
sibling,
highly
right?
Successful.
For
Yep,
people to know.
only
Yep.
sibling.
Yep.
And I went down the medical path, and life changes. But yeah, so then we're in Hungary. We're there for a couple of years. Things weren't as the parents were expecting in terms of politics and other things like that. So we packed up and we came back again. So I went to one school, and then very heavy bullying at the school and just other problems that we had. So then after a year, then went to another school. So I think I went to 7, 8, 9 different schools over my lifetime in 3 different countries, multiple locations.
Destabilizing.
So there was a lot of destabilization.
Just imagine how your life would have
years.
been if you had not had any of that going on. I don't know whether you'd be a stronger person or a weaker person because of it, but
It's an interesting one, and I know it shaped me because, there's been positives, pros and cons in terms of having that sort of upbringing. Certainly one thing that I'm doing with our kids now with my wife is that we're trying to give them the stability, because as much as the moving around has given me a lot of resilience, like my ability to tolerate stress is incredibly high. I've got resilience, all of that sort of stuff. And I can see opportunities very quickly because of the way I've been brought up. At the same time, it's led to a lot of problems later in life and a lot of challenges that I've had to overcome, particularly around, the whole identity thing, the whole self-belief, confidence, all of those sort of things.
Yeah, but what you probably are either consciously or not conscious of is that it also meant that you became a better communicator, because you're trying to figure out, what is this language? What are they saying? What do I need to do? What do they want me to do? Do I want to do that? Is that right or wrong? So, unconsciously, or at the time probably, but now looking back, you become a better communicator because of it. You become more of a, you can diagnose and analyze what's going on more accurately. Someone who just drifted through life, a comfortable life, wouldn't have had to have needed to do that sort of stuff. But you've evolved that feature of your business your personality, which has helped you in business.
Big time. I think the biggest thing for me that upbringing has given me is the ability to take myself out of a situation and see it from the other person's, and to walk in their shoes, and the ability to actually appreciate life from all perspectives. I've seen a lot of wealth. I've seen a lot of poverty. I've been in situations where I've had a lot of money, and I've been in situations where we haven't had a lot of money. And so when you've gone through those sort of different, yin and yang kind of situations, it's a very different perspective in life. Once you've tasted poverty, for example, you know what it's like to not have money and you don't know how you're going to move forward this week. It gives you a different drive.
It is easy, though, to forget that. The poor guy who becomes a multi-billionaire basketballer forgets a little bit about what it was like to be poor. But then I think in your situation, the challenges of being in business have brought you back to it a lot. I know in my case, and I don't, do you wonder? So, by the way, the first 2 things you mentioned is leaving Hungary and then the upbringing.
That upbringing.
Yeah. We'll come, there's probably a third one. But
there is.
And I want to ask you some other questions in a minute, but no, we'll come to that in a minute. We'll definitely cover that later, I suppose. But so let's talk about the third thing.
Well, the third thing was the thing that I think fundamentally changed my professional career, and it certainly changed my life completely. I mean, I'm who I am because of a lot of the third thing, and that was the moment when I started the first business. That was that moment when I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. All I know is it just was I was in a moment of impatience at the age of 19. I was studying chiropractic. Started off doing medical science at UQ for a year. I realized that I really didn't enjoy just standing in a laboratory pipetting, and I just found it really boring, to be honest with you. And I wanted to become an orthopedic surgeon. I wanted to become a surgeon. I wanted to go down that path. And so I thought, all right, I'll go do chiropractic, maybe go to the US afterwards, where from there I can get into the surgical path. And that was what was meant to happen. Anyway, so, I'm waiting in line in the first year of doing chiro, and I don't know, I just got impatient, and that impatience led to this idea in my head, and that idea turned into the first business. And what was fascinating about that journey is that it actually worked. I didn't know what I was doing, but it actually worked. And very, very quickly, by the age 21, 22, the business was humming. We had a national business. We had reps all over Australia. We were selling all over Australia. And I'm fairly confident we were the first online bookshop in Australia. This is back in 99, 2000. And so success came very quickly.
Yeah.
And with that came a growth in my ego. And like what you said before in terms of the basketball, I went through that period where for a while I thought that I was God's gift to business. I honestly, truly believed that I was going to be on the front cover of the Entrepreneur or Forbes or one of those as a young rich lister. And because I was on the path. Without a doubt, we were on the path. And at that point in time, the business was worth well more than $1 million. If I look back at what we've done, and part of me, sometimes I look back and go, did that really happen? But it did. So that was the third pivotal moment, because that moment and the thing, the exact point in time, I can tell you exactly when it was. Our lecturer in radiology, Professor Peter Bull, Korea University, was giving a lecture. Lights were turned off, big auditorium, and lights were off because we were learning about how to read X-rays and MRIs and things like that. And I will never forget the moment when I was looking down, reading something, and I look up, and I look at this, the projection of this X-ray that we were meant to diagnose, and I look down. There's an X-ray, and what was I reading? The Financial Review. I'm looking up, I'm looking down. I'm like, I'm in the wrong picture. I'm doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That was literally the moment when I decided, that's it, and I quit uni.
I think a lot of people have that moment where, I won't tell you about mine, but yeah, you think there's got to be something more. This is not the life I want. And to be able to identify that quickly and take action. Some people will stick with it. Some people will work in a job they don't like, or a career that's not really them, for the rest of their life, and to please their parents or their family or their partner. And sure, they make a living. But it's not really much fun, is it? And it's not really rewarding.
It's not. And I think because of the back and forth in my life, I'm quite decisive. So once I decide on a path, I just do it. And I take ownership of that path. That's really critical. So once I decided that, I had to face my family, especially my father, and that wasn't pleasant. And for many, many, many years, it wasn't pleasant, because what most people don't realize is that by that point, I was 1 year off getting my doctor of chiropractic. The coveted doctor title in the family. So it was 1 year off. And so I had to deal with that. But I was okay with that, because, I knew who I was. I knew exactly who I was. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And that was it. And that was that moment that I decided that from that point onwards, I will make business my life. I will make entrepreneurship my life. And that's exactly what I've done ever since then.
So remember, we were talking earlier about energy, focus, and belief. You believed rightly that was the right thing for you to do.
Yeah.
So even though it probably didn't please your dad, you stuck with it and you thought, this is my life. We'll just go back with a few questions. So we'll know people to know who you are, right? So Peter Spinda, how old?
45.
45. Lives in Brisbane.
Yep.
Married.
So if you ask me who I am, I'm 45 years old. First things first, I'm a father, 3 amazing kids, husband, amazing wife. Family life is it's the dream. Honestly, dream family life. Beyond that, I'm an entrepreneur, hands down. Love business. I live and breathe business. That's me in terms of professional career. Outside of that, I'm an adventurer. I love adventures in life, whether it's mountain biking, kayaking, hiking, whether it's traveling, food, drinking wine, talking to fresh people. And the last thing is I'm a learner, constant lifelong learner. I will never, ever stop learning. I will always learn.
So let's talk about that. So what's the story with the MBA?
The MBA was, so for many years, I pushed back on going to business school, because I was like, well, why go to business school? I've been running my own businesses. It's the best way to do it. But as I got into the consulting advisory space, more and more people were telling me that, no, you need to get your MBA, because without the piece of paper, you're not going to be credibility. So I was like, all right, fine. So a few years back, went back and did my MBA, majored in digital transformation, which is all around change management, organizational redesign. In all honesty, for me, I got next to no value out of it, other than the fact that I've got a pretty piece of paper, GPA of 7, like I smashed it, distinctions, all that sort of stuff. But the thing that I realized after doing the MBA was I actually really enjoyed learning, because it highlighted to me just how much knowledge there is out there to absorb. So I've continued studying. And
I look at it this way. I think you learn a lot about the theories, and you've been able to subsequently look at something and go, oh, that's this theory in play. Oh, that's this, or this can be resolved by doing that.
To some extent. But the one thing is that all my life, since that age of 19, I've always read books. So a lot of the things that they taught in theory, I already knew because I had read so many of the books. I've read textbooks on business, not because I had to do it for school or uni, because I enjoy reading. It's weird. But you're right. It did allow me to go, okay, well, here's the reality. Here's the theory. How do we combine the two in order to be this ultimate force? Because in business, especially as an advisor, you're playing with someone's livelihood. You're playing in a space where a positive impact can be significant just as much as a negative impact can be significant. And what you say to people, what you advise to them, they will listen to. And when they listen to it, the outcome quite often comes back to you as the advisor. Well, how did you guide them? Why did you guide them? You have to understand all of those mechanisms.
So let's talk about that. So when you are working with a client, every client is different. Every business is different. And what I've noticed is that if you don't listen and really understand their situation, you can't really help them. Too many people in this world that you're involved with just have this cookie cutter approach to every business. You're ticking this box, do that. And usually it comes down to things like marketing or working on the business, not in the business. And these sort of, and a lot of these advisors aren't really good business people themselves. So they're, failed and they're just trying to.
That's right. I had someone call me yesterday and he goes to me, I got a client for you, such and such. And I just need you to step in and take over and do this, this, and this. And I cut this person off. I said, listen, I'm not going to do that. He's like, what do you mean you're not going to? I'm like, that's not how I operate. How I operate is this, this, and this. Unless that person, that client has gone through my process, which includes a deep dive diagnostics, I can actually understand the business. Unless I've seen your financials, seen the true situation in the business, I'm not going to give you advice because I'm not seeing the full picture. And he pushes back, so, but this, no. I'm like, no. They either go down that path and I either understand the situation so that I can give the right advice or send them somewhere else because that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to truly, you've got to understand, you've got to appreciate. Because yes, every business is the same in the sense that we have foundation, sales, marketing, finance, et cetera.
Revenue, expenses,
exactly.
profit.
But every business is also very different for many, many, many reasons.
No two businesses are the same, really. You can have 2 childcare centres, same amount of kids, same amount of income, same amount of overheads, but they're still very, very different businesses, either culturally or in many different ways, where they're growing or dying or stagnating. Every business is unique. But you need to understand what's going on to be able to properly diagnose. And not only that, I think you've learnt, because of your experiences, that people won't often do what they need to do or want to do or won't want to do what they have to do until you get to know them and you understand what motivates them. And even then, it's probably pretty hard to get people to do the things that they need to do.
Absolutely. It's a good advisor knows how to play chess. And I think quite often client engagements are like a game of chess. And this might sound bad, but it's not. Because quite often as an advisor, you see where they need to go because you just through experience and everything else, just the fact that you're outside of the business, you can actually see the forest, right? And they can't see the forest. But what often happens is you can't just tell someone, do that. Quite often you have to play a game of chess where you have different moves you've already lined up. I'm usually in engagements. I'm a year or 2 years ahead. I'm already thinking where we're going to go in 2 years' time. And we're lining things up to take it down that way. But the way we've got to do it is that there has to be a win-win approach. We have to generate wins. We have to generate returns on investment if we're talking technical. But there's something more fundamental to that. The most fundamental thing in the advisory relationship is that we have to build a relationship and we have to feel like not only the client needs to feel like they can trust me or us as advisors, but we need to know that we can trust the client, that they're telling us the truth.
So Pete, you mentioned books before.
Yep.
You've written a book.
I have. Realities of Business. Misadventures, lesson learned.
I am not mentioning this to spruik the book, although if you want to buy it, you can probably find it somewhere. But the thing that struck me about your book, that I liked about it, was that you wrote it, if I recall correctly, from a hammock in Thailand.
So there were two key locations that book was written.
Yeah.
It was polished off. No, actually, no, sorry. It was started in a hammock off the coast of Thailand on a little island. And from there, we backpacked our way through Europe. We're in Italy. We're in a little town in Italy called Brez. Had a little apartment there. And for a month, my wife and I did absolutely, honestly, nothing. We just chilled, drunk wine, traveled. That's it in a little location. And I would sit in front of the fireplace, literally watching the snow, writing that book, handwritten book. And then my wife was the proofreader, so she'd proofread it, go through it. And the book was written because I was sick and tired of reading about the success stories without actually the reporters, the writers explaining the realities behind the successes. Because the overnight success is very, very, very rare. Like we're talking micro percentage. The reality is most overnight successes take 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
How many businesses, how many ideas?
You don't get rich quick.
No. And that was the whole point of writing the book, is to show people, like, this is what it's truly like.
The realities.
As an entrepreneur.
And really that book is about a lot of things that went wrong as well as what went right. And I think, you mentioned the critical points in your life, but I think that was probably one too, because things had been going okay and then it stopped going okay. And so you went to Thailand and you did all that because you were like, right, what now? Like you'd sort of bottomed out. You needed to take stock and start again. Is that right?
Yeah. I was actually thinking the other day, so in terms of the businesses that I've sold, what would they be worth? I'm like, okay, what would they be worth? So I'm fairly confident that 3 of my businesses had a valuation north of $1 million. So certainly the first one, several millions of dollars if I look at it from today's metrics point of view. The second one that was that would have been north of $1 million in valuation, so sale price, was a recruitment agency that went very, very well to a point. That was interesting lessons that I learned there. And the third one was, interestingly, Digital Duet, which was the web development agency that we started, and we had consultancy, we had agency in terms of web development, marketing, etc. And when that one really took off, things were going quite well, and we were very much on track to achieving some significant success there.
Yeah.
But each one of them, for various reasons, grew, and I made a lot of money, lost some money. But in fact, I always move forward, and that's the thing. I've never gone to a point where I've lost so much money in any business that I've had to go bankrupt. Like I've always made money in business. So 3 businesses worth north of $1 million. What I've learned over these years, though, I think, is how to hold on to the money now, how to preserve my personal wealth, the family's wealth, and how to preserve the wealth within the business. I think as we grow as business owners, we become more and more mature. We still make mistakes, but we're making less mistakes. We're being more calculated with the risks that we take. I mean, I still take risks, but it's more calculated risks. But more fundamentally, we're building businesses that will hold their value for much longer, and they're going to be generational businesses as opposed to, up and down type.
But what if you'd sold those businesses when they were at the peak? How would it? I mean, I reckon you didn't sell because you were like thinking this is going too well. No, I wasn't ready for it, right? No. But what if you had?
What if I had?
Would things be different?
No, they wouldn't be. They wouldn't be different because I'd still be in business. I will always be in business. The biggest difference would be that instead of starting, and this is the important thing, instead of starting businesses, I'd be buying businesses. I love starting businesses, don't get me wrong, but true wealth, in my opinion, the safer wealth is through acquisition, buying businesses, acquiring other businesses. That's what I'd be doing. The other thing that I am planning to get into is getting more into the private equity, venture capital, becoming that sort of individual who not only has the capital to invest in other businesses, but actually I want to be mentoring, bringing through the next generation of entrepreneurs, taking them under my wing, under our wing as a team, and helping them achieve. It's not about me making more money.
No.
It's about giving back.
Yeah.
And by the way, on that, the reason I'm in advisory, I could be in any business. I could start an e-commerce business. I could do that, this, that, and the other. And actually, someone asked me the other day, so why are you in advisory? It's actually a very difficult business. It's a very difficult business to start from scratch and to grow.
For many reasons, yeah.
But the reason I'm doing this is because I love business, and through advisory, you get to play with so many businesses. I love talking to other business owners. Like they're my people.
Doesn't work. Yeah, that's right.
So if you're a client of ours, you're my people, because business is what we live and breathe. It's just,
and people need someone like you who's got the experience under their belt, had successes, had failures, knows what it's like, got the MBA, so you got the paper, the credibility.
I'll have the PhD hopefully in the next year or so.
But I think it would have been different if you'd sold. But by the way, what you said about acquisition is really most relevant. So, and it's one of those things you learn. So if you'd known that when you were younger, you probably would have acquired other businesses.
Absolutely.
At the time, you probably thought, no, I'm not wasting money buying business. I'll build it myself.
I'm not wasting money on business. I'll waste money on cars, luxuries, and toys, which I did.
Or trying to get the business up to the speed it needs to be at. I was with some guys in Sydney Tuesday. The business has just exceeded 1.2 billion a year turnover, and it took about 10 years to get there. They want to get to 2 billion in the next 12 months. And how they do it? Acquisition. So they found a business that's turning over 100 million, and they want to buy that business. And they're settling on another business with us before the end of June. And they know that the only way for that business to grow, and the only way to go forward, is to acquire. So they are so good at what they do. So, business owners should really think about getting out of your comfort zone, looking at acquisition as a way to grow. And it's probably, would you agree, Pete? It's better than trying to do it yourself.
100%. 100% the best.
Yeah.
I think, in terms of who I am, this is a big message for all business owners, in fact, everyone out there, is that if you think about who you are, and if you've achieved any form of success, and if you feel like you're successful right now, just remember that the truly successful are the ones that are able to look beyond the current success and are recognizing that success can be fleeting. They also recognize that everyone has strengths, but you've also got weaknesses. And so they recognize the need to bring other people on the journey, because the solo entrepreneur doesn't ever become successful. You look at all the truly successful individuals, it's the teams, whether it's the people in their business, whether it's the advisors, whether it's the family. It's you've got to be open. And that's the other word. You've got to be open.
Yeah.
Just because you've already built a business that's worth $100 million doesn't mean that you're God's gift business. You got to be open to what's happening and changing in economies and technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
One thing I've realized, it's taken me a long time, 20 years to realize you've got to get good people. You can't make it to the next level without having a great accountant, a great lawyer, a great advisor, a great finance person that you can work with. If you don't have great people around you, it's going to be compromised. You really need to do that.
Absolutely.
And a great business advisor.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, and I know this will sound like, okay, we're selling ourselves, but and to an extent we are. But the reality is, and this is what irks me a lot, is that everyone talks about lawyers and accountants having to be on the team. But man, can we just all also accept that you need a business advisor? Just because you started the business or you're in business doesn't mean that you know everything.
No.
You need a good business advisor who can not only give you advice on the business, but they can also challenge what the accountant says, challenge what the lawyer says. So good advisors are able to pull teams together. They can come back to you and say, hey, listen, Bruce, I actually disagree with that.
Yeah.
Or challenge you.
Or why are you doing
thinking.
it that way?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we grow.
Yeah. So let's finish on this note. Your dad was probably disappointed that you didn't do medicine. And he's probably held that situation in his mind for a long time. What about now?
Oh, it's gone. I'm fairly, very confident that it's gone.
Okay.
I think you get to a point in life where, certainly as parents, to first things first, you need to understand and realize that your child has to live their own life, and they're allowed to make their own choices, and they need to make their own choices, right?
It's hard to learn that, especially for men.
Absolutely. But then the other part is that you need to then let them do one of two things. Let them prove to you that they made the right choice and let them succeed in that, or let them come back to you and say, you know what, Dad, you're right. I should have done that. Either way, there's going to be a direction. And in my case, I feel like I have had a successful career despite the ups and downs. I believe I'm, heading in the direction that I need to head in.
Mm.
And, for me, the biggest proof of that is that it's not stopping. I'm not quitting anytime soon. I never have, never will. So can my parents be proud? Absolutely. But on the flip side, I'm actually more proud of them because now as a parent, I look back and I think, how did you put me through private school for the last 2 years of my education? How did you do this? How did you do that?
Exactly. That's great. That's great. So you're halfway through your business career. Got the next half to come.
Absolutely.
It'll be very interesting to see how.
And you never know, by the time the next half finishes, we might all be AI sentient beings living in their computer in the clouds.
Who knows where we'll be. We'll look
Be
back
around
on
for a
this
long
and go,
time.
remember that? But thanks, Pete. It's been good getting to know you today, and I hope people have benefited and enjoyed that. We lifted a few of the seedy bits out, which is good.
Absolutely. Well, that's for another time. That's for the wine and dine discussion.
The after hours version.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good time.